Hello, and welcome to Need, a human design podcast. My name is Nicola Henderson, and I am your host and guide. We have a cracking guest on today, the beautiful Tara Bach. Tara is a fellow projector. She's a 5-1 mental projector on the left angle cross of the alpha. We are going to deep dive into the world of social media, specifically social media through the lens of human design, how we can use it to differentiate, use it as a tool, and how we can learn to tune more into frequency and discern the content that we're putting out there and also the content that we're taking in. There's a lot of wisdom dropped in this conversation, and I really hope that you enjoy it. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out, either to myself or Tara, and we'll be very happy to help. And remember to just have fun and go lightly. Don't be too hard on yourself. It's funner to do things without an agenda. Now, I have to apologize that the settings in my system here, I didn't realize were set to audio only. So it is an audio only podcast, except for this little snippet here. I hope that you enjoy, and we'll see you next time. Hello, hello, and welcome. My name is Nicola Henderson, and I am joined by the beautiful and the magical and mystical and creative and impactful and brilliant Tara Bach. How are you today, Tara?
Oh, I'm great.
You've got two projectors. I feel like we almost look like sisters or something side by side here. Like our hair is similar. We have a similar shaped face. Just
Both like glowy cheeks. I love it. Ear to ear grin. You have me ear to ear grinning after that.
Yes, and two little goddess sisters here are going to be talking about social media today in a really juicy, nuanced way, I think, and where this conversation is really going to expand into is how to approach social media with the right frequency. How can we put the right things out into social media? How can we make sure that we're taking in the right things for us with social media through the lens of human design and the not self? Differentiating the different platforms, as well as looking at, I'm a 6 line, so I have that zoomed out perspective of things, and you're a 5-1. And so you've got really that immersive experience that you've had being in social media yourself and having had early success with it. So there's some really interesting perspectives, I think, that are going to come out from our conversation today. So just to start us off, Tara, I'm wondering if you can speak to your experience and success on social media, as well as a bit of a disclaimer. What do you think is important for people to know about you and your design that may have contributed to your success and how you navigate social media?
Yeah, thank you. I do. I feel like the lens and the filter that I have has definitely served an impact in the way I've navigated through not only being a 5-1, but desire motivated. I have a lot of third lines, so I do have a tendency to jump in and play with things and mutate them. And I'm a Leo rising. There's so much that's just in my nature that I feel like has encouraged me to lean into that. I'm an Aquarius. I love technology, innovation. Yeah, there's a lot of ties in there. So a I have had a natural curiosity for sharing, and I'm collective. And so there's a lot of interwoven parts of myself throughout this. And so my share does come through my lens and my experience. It's like a take what you like, leave the rest. I am happy to share my experience and the lens that I've been able to observe and be a part of in that virtual world and what it's brought to me.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to speak a bit to being a mental projector? on social media?
Yeah, I mean, the whole concept of being a mental projector and kind of feeling into what that is like, in context is an interesting thought for me. Um, because I know I've spoken to Nicola before about how much I really enjoy my openness, and it is fascinating the journey I've been able to take and what I've been able to take in and experience and learn in all of my openness from my experience on social media, as well as just my defined head. I feel like is a blessing. Um, but I think we might come back to that part as we talk about our definition and maybe how that kind of shows up, or unless you want to talk about it now. Just being like how things might get influenced differently between types and centers. So I don't know. You want to get into that a little bit? Yeah.
Mm,
So I think, I think being a mental projector, one of the blessings of my defined mind is I really will grab onto certain things and chew them out and play with them. And then most other things just kind of fall away. So I feel like one of the greatest blessings about being a mental projector is I don't really get caught up in a lot of the open mind trip. I don't. I don't get caught up in thinking about things that aren't about whatever's going on in my world. So it's really a focused experience for me that isn't very penetrative with anything that's not kind of somehow threaded through in the way my mind works. So, with that said, I've witnessed and I observe people who have open minds and the influence that that brings into their world on social media, and what a trip that must be to have to weed out all of this excess thought process and all those parts. And I'm sure maybe you could speak a little bit to that in your experience, maybe. Um,
mm.
have you felt that kind of influence come through in what you observe and take in and absorb?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, because we're sort of talking about where the not self can come in with that, I mean, I suppose something that we'll probably touch on today is how to become wise around all of the inspiration that is online. But, where my mind has initially gone with that is how the tendency to want to be strategic, to sort of see everything, take everything in, and you're trying to like organize it and make sense of it, and you think the only way that you can do that is by being strategic. So you really get lost in that whole soup of what's out there and what people are doing, what the options are, like all of the things. Your right brain, right mind, and you have a focused perspective and an active body. So that's just to sort of, for people that are listening, that's an important point. And I really think that that's very interesting how you said that, how you focus in and you zero in on something and start sort of chewing on it, and finding your own inspiration. Is it, I mean, is this right? You then find your own inspiration through that, or like,
I find it interesting because often where it started stirring when I really got my hands into, I had my knack for doing my own thing for years, but then when I really started to dig into the creative process of maybe like the video end of things, it was very like the 41 Desire experience of it just like building up over time. And I would just, the gift of having a defined mind, it's like almost being your own muse is like the inspiration that comes, and then it's a very vivid experience, and all of a sudden I would just like feel things kind of playing out in a certain way or a story unfold, and then I would just creatively start kind of putting the pieces together of my own world that I have. And so the gift is like I find my own inspiration, but it does kind of sometimes stem from, I can't say it's always just everybody's got inspiration from somewhere, but I feel like it's more of it marinates in me after something catches, and then I'm able to like pull it apart and play with it.
very interesting. Yeah, and I think that the difference with an open head is, it's all, I mean, I need motivation and power view, so I don't have possibilities necessarily coming in. But it's like it sounds like that's uh, a there's a potency to your process that you're able
Mhm.
to draw on within yourself, whereas the difference is like it's so diluted for the other 70% of the population with open heads that yeah, it can be hard.
I love the way you said that. Yeah.
Mm. Okay, let's go into success on social media, and in particular differentiated success for projectors.
Mm.
What advice would you give a projector using social media to be seen for what they do and to steer them away from bitterness? And you're allowed to just sort of brain dump this whole situation, and we can circle back to that after if you want. Curious to hear about your ideas on differentiation.
I love this. I I've had both experiences of virality and being seen, and the importance of allowing the space for you to figure it out, right? Um, I find social media to be such an interesting starting point of what I would say my deconditioning is, being the first system I've mastered, right? Because projectors are supposed to master a system, essentially supporting them in mirroring to themselves authenticity and being able to weed out what they aren't. And that's really what I've done the last decade, seeing what's working, what's not, overworking myself, trying to prove my worth, all the things. And somehow, like, this journey has been able to mirror back to me when I'm rushing, what happens to the quality of my work when I rush, what happens to what I'm giving and receiving in that energetic interaction. Like, what am I putting out, and what kind of frequency am I getting back, is really the conversation I have in that relationship. Um, and so, with that, understanding when I have put energy into something that wasn't completely resonant with me, and taking it as a learning experience and seeing the feedback I was getting, or the kind of feedback I was getting, were always kind of then signposts for me to look at myself and just check in with, what am I doing, and am I being of service to the whole, or how is this looking? Where's my time going? Because it's not always about social media. It's been another mirror for me. So maybe I've been putting time into social media and not time into other aspects of my life that needed attention too. It's that duality of kind of figuring out real life along with me, trying to build community and make my dreams happen and share other parts of myself. So we have the gift of being able to do that through there, but also kind of having that awareness that when something's off, it's not always like that thing. It's just something telling you that there's not a resonance somewhere in your life. What, like, energetically, with your time and your space and where you're giving attention to. And I think that's like an important part for projectors to lean into when they're putting their time and energy into anything. Your bitterness isn't necessarily saying, like, oh, it's social media, I'm putting my time into this. It might just be like the incorrectness of where that attention's going at that time, um, if that makes sense.
Mm. So that's really interesting around it sounds like almost whatever we're using, whether it's social media or something else, it's a barometer to
Mhm.
reflect back to us where we're at. Is that sort of what
Yeah.
you're saying? Okay, that's
Yes.
really interesting and it's so true. Yeah.
Um, yeah. Thank you for pulling that in for me. About that. Um, Yeah. So I just find it's been an interesting wayfinder in that aspect. I reached out to another mental projector as we were talking about social media, and I asked her about her experience, and she had given me the same feedback on the TikTok, Instagram thing. So for me, I originally, when I started out in social media almost a decade ago, was very different. The algorithm was very different. The way people communicated was very different. It's changed a lot. And I remember just reaching, like, I had about 100 followers a day I was gaining, and just getting a lot, like a really big number of recognition that, like, you can't even fathom, like you can't even understand numbers like that as far as like it translating to humans. And people would just constantly be messaging me or asking me basically for free advice on what I did, but I wasn't getting any recognition for what it took me to get there, or why I had an expertise in the subject, um, or I wasn't getting recognized for the artwork itself. So I was getting really bitter about feeling used. Like, I'm putting my time and effort into just trying to share my work, but the reflections I was getting, or the response I was getting, was just a lot of questions that I didn't have the energy or capacity to answer. And
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I was kind of it was getting taken away of the purpose of why I was trying to share what I was creating a little bit. Um, which ended up being really interesting because that specific account had somehow gotten deleted in the internet world, and then everything's gone overnight. What a what a fascinating lesson to learn. And so it's like years of building up this fake, like, this, like, not fake world, but putting a lot of energy into something as a mental projector, um, really not getting the success to a certain extent back, when you're trying to build community and connection. And then all of a sudden it's gone. And then you're like, oh, okay, well, what did we learn here? Right. And so then I ended up getting back into it. And it was really a fascinating, reflective experience because it might have taken 2 years, but all of the people I did connect with, like deeply connect with, found me again. So,
Mm-hmm.
like, somehow, a, a lot of them. And I think that's where it goes to show just how beautiful it is. And what speaks more volumes is the depth of your connections and the correctness in the right connections, and the difference that feels than the excess of just people. Like, um, not that there's a right or wrong, but I feel like that was definitely a transitional point in my process where I was able to discern the difference of, like, oh, these people, like, are here for a different part of me than just
Mm-hmm.
wanting to know what I know,
Mm.
um, which was really a nice experience.
That's interesting, this whole fifth line universalization thing for strangers. And I'm a fourth line personality. So it's like I know that it's going to be sort of deep and narrow connections with people, whereas you'd think it would be more broad with the fifth line. And it is because of that projection field. So it sounds like it's those people that found you were the ones that really, I don't know if I would say that they saw through the projection exactly, but there was a stronger resonance that brought them back through to you.
Yeah, I think resonance is a huge part of the fractal lines.
Mm,
And whether I had that experience, I feel like every experience is good if you take time to really reflect and see what it's showing you. And yeah, whether it was showing me like I didn't have the capacity to fully hold this space at the time to
mm,
be in front of that many people, or like to really be able to navigate my own boundaries in what I was there for.
Yeah. I want to actually jump to what I was going to ask you at the very end, and I think now is a perfect time.
Mm.
So, I want to hear about your lessons learned from the start, from losing your account to, I mean, because that was how many years ago where you started that first? And just for the people listening, because I can't remember with my right brain if I said this in the intro or not, but you started an art account as a young mom doing your art thing. So we're putting up videos of you painting, right? And
Mhm.
then sharing your experience as a young mom. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so from there, everything, the whole evolution. So I'm curious from how long and what you've learned, your lessons learned over the span. If your channel of abstraction can help
Tie it all together.
tie it all together.
Well, buckle up. Um, I mean, the whole journey in itself was really fascinating, especially being a projector. And I was saying, like, if I were to say this without the context of being a projector, I know the amount of like, I don't even know if it would be judgment, but like just kind of maybe on the jealousy end of some spectrum, because it was really just started. I was a young mom and studying in school, and I had to take like a prereq. And so I was taking a painting class and I started to get recognition, and I really was engaged in that creative process. And I just shared a few photos on like my Facebook, and then slowly started getting recognition for that. And people would be hiring me out. And I was like really curious to learn more and build a skill. So I was just taking on these jobs, and eventually I just from doing that was able to switch. And all I did was like just take photos of what I was doing in the present moment and share those. And then somewhere along the lines of that process, I began shifting and discovering my own process of creativity and creation, and really mutating kind of what resonated with me, and then started letting go of more of the scholarly work. And so that just kind of developed over time. And what happened was the more I was just kind of sharing what I was doing in the present moment, because it was always changing. And I think that's a really fascinating thing about being a mental projector is like, yeah, I've always been creative, but like whatever I'm doing is always kind of moving in some different way. And so just kind of seeing that I would always kind of be a little all over the place. Um, and eventually, just from sharing, I would have amazing opportunities just drop into my mailbox. Like galleries would reach out to me, or there would be other just people that resonated, and we would connect through social media, and really interesting things would happen that I would have never thought of. And I was just like, oh, I'm just doing what I'm doing. And it was a really beautiful thing to see wherever it can go. And then that started kind of feeding me. It was like, wow, this is really wild. I wonder what else could happen, and just kind of started down that journey of let's just see where it takes you. You know, I've got this creative mind that wants to do a bunch of things, and let's see what happens. Sometimes I had a client give me like a bunch of like doors that they let me just change into something, and it was really cool. And I would take on whatever job was really interesting. Like I got to paint on a helicopter and just fun things um, that I know I wouldn't have had opportunities like that if it wasn't for that connectivity and my drive for experience.
Mm.
um, so yeah, it was really cool. And I think where things got a little trickier for me was trying to be more logical or go down the generator kind of path of like building up step by step some kind of thing for myself, is where I
Mm.
began to get lost in that mix. Um, so I was always kind of looking to ground in some substance of like being a fine artist And I remember telling you one day, I'm in all these entrepreneurial art groups, and we're building these businesses. And yeah, I feel like I just kind of got hungry to grow, not necessarily like a name, but in a different direction than just that, like, kind of more playful, like, see what happens. And the logical steps tried to come in, and things just got really just like messy from there. So I remember saying, like, one day I'm like looking at this like manifestation list, and on it somewhere says like, oh, in how many ever years I want to have my art in a museum. And I remember like one day just looking at that, and I was like, who the fuck wrote that? Like, I can't even believe I wrote that. I never wanted that in my life. How did I get here? I was like, that sounds so stale and boring. Like, I never wanted that. So yeah, just kind of getting lost in the trip of like, how big could it go or something, instead of just like, there is, I don't know. Uh, yeah, so it was like a nice little redirect and correct for myself to like come back home and see what did I really value. And I think that's a really important part, to like check back in with yourself, on a consistent basis of like, why am I here, what's important to me now. You know, i
Yeah.
think I think it's easy to get lost in the sauce.
Get lost in the sauce.
Get
Oh my
lost in the
God.
sauce.
I love that so much. That's open head right there. But I mean, it's the human experience. It's,
Hmm.
what you've just described is something that is a trajectory that we all go through, more or less, in our own time, in our own way, in our own context of things. It sounds like it was a relatively fast arc in the way that you just described it. I'm not sure if it was, but I know, looking back at my own history, I mean, how many times did I burn out over those 15, 20 years of of being on that trip, of thinking that there is something to work towards and achieve and strive for in order for life to feel like it has some sort of correctness and meaning to it, and that I'm going to be on my deathbed and feel like I've lived the best life that I could because I went after and did all these things. And I mean, the whole thing with human design, of course, and I know I'm preaching to the choir with you, but it's about releasing all of that and just returning to the play, as you say, and the ease and what feels joyous and brings out that sort of innocence that we have it from childhood, I think. And that's the most fun, really, like what's actually fun. And it's not like life should always be fun, as my father reminded me when I was younger. I've reconciled and reckoned with that one. But I think it's a lightness. I think that's the word that I'm looking for. It's a lightness that we return to. Yeah.
Hmm. I love that. It's true. And I think that's part of the navigational like process for projectors, especially, to recognize in the space. There's so much space to have space there, and it's easy to know there's an algorithm and things like that. But I do truly believe that frequency and authenticity in having the groundedness to why you're doing what you're doing and the purpose behind it, even if it is just, you know, like dancing or whatever it is for you, in that truth and in that place of being you, is such a strong resonance, no matter where you're sharing it in a space.
Hmm. Yeah. You've briefly touched on a couple of things that I actually really like to circle back to, because I am very curious to hear more of your perspective on this. And it's around allowing space to figure it out,
Mm.
but also, 'cause I think sort of the sister to that is the flexibility that we have as a projector. And you mentioned this in our conversation before, where with the openness that we have, I mean, especially you and I with two defined centers, you more so being a mental projector, but the flexibility to just try things and experience different things. Can you go into that in more depth?
Yeah. Um, I th- I think that the journey of authenticity and peeling back the layers of yourself is so fascinating to really see what you're capable of.
I love
It's
that so much.
it is really really cool. So I find that if someone were to feel called to play around with social media, because I do feel like it's another thing you to welcome to experiment with, because it could be so many different things, and it could be fun and lighthearted and playful and so much more than just, maybe, I don't know. But what I discovered for myself is, even in not knowing why or having some profound reason besides like being bored or wanting to try something, whatever it was, I was still learning along the whole way. And I was still breaking a little bit more out of the shell. And I was showing up on camera. And no matter what it was that I was learning or doing, whether it was stupid or figuring out something new, I was slowly developing me, no matter what was going on outside there. And a lot of those experiences have helped me be able to be in front of a camera confidently, speak to another human in a different way of connecting. It has brought me closer connected with other people in so many different ways, because we don't realize also in the nuances of our silly fuck around find out how many other people connect with those parts of ourselves. And I've witnessed just how brave and different it is for those people that are willing to put themselves out there to begin with.
Yeah.
Because most people won't even try out of fear or even disinterest. That's fine too. There's plenty of people that have no interest.
Yeah.
And I don't know, for me it was a very empowering experience of discovery.
Did you find that, because I'm asking this question because I've noticed my own journey with a defined ego of showing up online and letting myself show up in a almost egotistic way that did feel very uncomfortable, but there was a big healing journey through that for me, in allowing me to kind of step into my egoic energy, my willful energy, without feeling bad or apologizing for it, which, most ego beings as children get told that they're too willful. So we sort of grow up with a gnarled sense of our willfulness. And so that there was a process for me with that. So with through my definition. So I'm wondering if there's a similar deconditioning moment you've had with your defined head and ajna with that.
I could resonate with that with my own definition. It's taken so many years for me to discover what it's like to share my mind online and my voice. I don't have a defined voice, but I do have 31 in my earth, which is the gate of influence. But when we talk about frequency and impact, and if I'm looking at the analytics, is when I find the most success, when I have all the parts of my creativity mixed with maybe sharing an experiential story intertwined with
Mm.
those parts of my storytelling. And the funniest, I don't know if it's funny, but I guess the most powerful part I've learned from that is just how much time it takes for all those pieces to be ready in my process to come together for its own timing. So that is a
Yeah.
really important lesson I've learned in sharing and how I share, and just the beauty of allowing the alchemy to happen in my own mental projector process, because the potency is so strong and the frequency is correct when I allow all those places and spaces to marinate till it's when it's time, and then allow myself to share on that timing. Um,
Yeah, I've got goosebumps right now thinking about this. The videos that you've shared, I love your voice. And so you painting and then your words over top on the frequency of your voice, yeah, it carries so much depth of frequency to it. It's fucking beautiful. I love it so much. And it's almost like jaw dropping. It really has that level of impact on people.
Thank you. Thank you. It's it's been a trip to get to a place to allow myself to be able to do that, but also give myself the permission to not have to be that person every time I show up.
Yes.
And yeah, because it's not like that. Right?
Yes, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's had, like I said, like it's a really cool place to be in the state of acceptance and know what creativity looks like, or like know what it takes for something to marinate fully in my correctness, and allow that to be, has been, I think, my favorite part that I've come to.
Yeah. And that's something I've noticed in my own process. I mean, my own journey on social media has been, gosh, it's been a grind until only probably it's felt like a grind, shall we say, until maybe the last, I don't know, 6-ish months is coming to mind. I mean, it's hard to say for sure, but what I've noticed is feeling just really easy for me at the moment, and this can change in the blink of an eye, but it's just mixing up what I put out there. It's not like I don't need to prove to people that I know things about human design. When I get the urge to share a post that talks a bit about teachy human design things, I'll put it out there. Awesome. But other posts are going to be like me dancing in front of the camera talking about how we can maybe accept our bodies a little bit more, or I'll do a voiceover. I enjoy those once in a while if I feel like that's sort of where the creative urge is filtering through. But it's just a bit of a whatever comes to me. I'm a splenic being, and it's got to be fun. It's got to feel easy. I mean, there has to be a level of efficiency. It can't eat up too much energy, particularly as projectors. It's got to be receptive. It's got to be light. And I want to circle back to something that you touched on, and just for people that are listening around, we can't rush getting to a point of finding our frequency groove, because, and I want to say frequency groove because we grow and develop at a certain, you know in a certain way, but it's particularly if you have an undefined G center, for example, the way that you share, the fonts that you use, the colors that you use, they're always going to be different. They're always going to change. Your name's going to bloody change, your handle. It's all going to change over time. It's okay. But it's really, it can be frustrating in the grind when you think, I could make money on social media. I can use it to promote myself and grow my business. But then you've got someone who's quad right and all of the things, and they're trying to fit into this box over here, and they're trying to rush their growth, and they're trying to become this thing over here, as opposed to just letting go of all of it
Mhm.
and just letting themselves show up in a way that feels light and fun and interesting and easy and authentic to themselves in that moment. And it could be only posting once a month. It could be posting 3 times a day. It doesn't, there's no rules with this, but I know that it's so easy to get stuck into a trap of, I'm not doing this right, because I have 100% be there. In a sense, I'm honestly still there, you know. I'm not doing it right. I don't have all the answers. People need to tell me what I'm doing wrong, and then I can do it better, and then it'll have a better result and this and that. And I
Mhm.
mean, that's when I'm sort of turned in on myself, which is not the right way to be, versus when I'm just like, meh, whatever, my bills are paid, it's all good, I'm just going to do whatever the hell I feel like doing, and that's it,
Mhm.
is a much more interesting way. And in doing that, I've actually found more recognition, which has just come through people being like, oh my God, I love your energy.
Mhm.
And that's just really nice to hear. That's a really nice reflection as a projector. Yeah.
Yeah. I love your energy too.
Thanks. Ditto.
Yeah. Um, yeah, it is. It's it's really about the quality of the connection that you make on there, and it really does take one. I mean, I'm a 5'1", but let me tell you, it's really the few that really give me the recognition, and then the opportunity comes, and it's not meant to be, you know, the overnight success thing is really just not, it's not ideal for anyone. The amount of, and this is another reason why I believe, so I mean, all my one lines, I believe slow growth and fine tuning and like really getting that frequency right is what's going to set you up to have the strong foundation for when you're ready for whatever that success looks like for you, if it's social media or if it's something that ends up translating into just whatever other part of your life. Becoming stronger in the self that you actually are in your authentic being
Mm.
is everything you actually need to set yourself up for success. Um, because that strength is really unwavering. So no matter what comes to you, you're not going to get swayed so easy by whatever comes. um, yeah. I think about often. I was thinking how wild it is that social media is probably our largest conditioning influence.
Yeah.
And if you think of being a projector, what we consume is so important for us.
Yeah.
And something that came to mind the other day that I was thinking about was how much of control we do have. So we have control of how we show up in the frequency, in the in the frequency of like ourselves and our authenticity and how often, right? And we do get control of how we want to interact with the other. But oftentimes, what we're all looking for is just creating community and connection and having that with each other, um, and just the importance of like kind of allowing yourself to filter out the rest, um, and the permission slip to do so. I love my two fours that I'm just like, yeah, anybody who you're like, I see them seeing me in a way you don't like, I'm like, block them all, block them out. Um, there are some really cool things about the technology. You can fine tune your algorithm to not show you things you don't want to see. I would love, I'd love for my open head people to like go into their settings and say, I don't, or like if they see posts of things that really aren't keeping them healthy, if it's not keeping your mind, body, soul healthy to be consuming that kind of thing, I would so say to tailor it to you, say not interested.
Yeah.
um, because yeah, it just could like really um, seduce your not self sometimes.
Seduce your not self.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, if I'm seeing an ad too many times, I will flag that in it so I don't see it anymore. I will do the not interested. If there's someone that, it's funny because sometimes I'll see, how it will suggest accounts for you, and you see a video and you're like, "Oh my God, I love this person. This is great." And then you go and follow them. But then you see another video and you're like, "Oh, I don't actually like them. That happens actually more often than not for me. And I don't know if it's because of a frequency thing for them or where I was at in that moment, but I'll just straight away go and unfollow. I will go through who I follow regularly and unfollow people who I'm like, you're not on my wavelength anymore.
Mhm.
Which,
I love that.
yeah, but I mean, are there other ways, to manipulate the algorithm?
There's ways, like I have gone into my search bar and I just put my favorite things in there.
Oh, cool.
So I will just put my favorite hashtags or things I want to look at, and I will feed it what I want to see. Because that's really how it works. It wants to connect what you already like and what you like to see. And when I do change, because I do all the time, there'll be times where I'm really low and I just want to like have junk food. Like basically, I want to look at the funny things, and I'll be like, it's all spiritual. And I'm like, why is my algorithm trying to ruin my life? I'm not going to learn anything right now.
Yeah.
Because that's part of my not self. I can easily go like want information overload and like go too far on the spiritual journey. So like sometimes I'm like, I just need some dumb, mindless, very human stuff. So I'll go in there and I'll try to like start feeding it funny things, and it works. Or I asked my friend, I'm like, give me some memes, uh, just to let it reset.
That's a good idea.
Need that balance.
So let's go into this is a good segue into TikTok.
Mm.
So you had some really juicy insights on this. So I'm going to just like chuck it over to you and see what wants to be pulled out around Instagram and TikTok, the difference there, maybe where, because honestly, I'm quite confused by TikTok. I'm on it a little bit more. You saw I just posted a video and I was like, we'll see what happens, but I don't really get it. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah.
I love TikTok. I actually have not even been like really active on TikTok, only because I have found it just being a mental projector, like it's easier efficiently for my energy to kind of stick to one thing. Um,
Yeah.
but the difference in community is way different. So we have, just to set the stage of the differences in the platforms, is you have Instagram is much more aesthetic and a visual platform. It is much more kind of tailored to attraction content, which is consumer consumption and just quick. So, I mean, basically being a projector, it's really not. um, you could see how that kind of has a weird friction to us. So then you have TikTok, which is again, I think if people really got from a lot of conversations I've had, most people that aren't on TikTok is because they haven't spent a little bit of time kind of feeling it out or using it much. But the reason why in 2020 there was like that huge shift with people using TikTok really was because it had that raw, unfiltered, you're with me, I'm with you experience that was much more natural and very human. So it's not as much as the highlight reel of people's lives. You're really getting like the humanity from a lot of TikTok experiences. It's like not about camera quality, it's not about having the best of the best. It's really just people being people. And when we're looking for connection and communion, if you look at a lot of the activity on there, that's really more so what you get is a lot of more interactive uh, experience with people. Uh,
Mm.
and then I think that's also why there's such a dissonance in the human design community. I have observed on Instagram because it feels like everybody kind of has this awareness of potential of being able to be a projector and have the knowledge of the system and wanting to make a business of it. And so it might feel like aesthetically, like this looks really business oriented and it pulls it together in a very nice, attractive way with Instagram. Um, so I just really feel like I see a lot of people really trying for that on Instagram, and like the it's really hard to translate from information of a system like human design in a way that's actually going to support humans, because it's getting so diluted or like so deduced down um, in these bite-sized pieces, which is just difficult on social media across the board, right?
Mm.
um, so I guess where you find a little bit more grace in trying to connect with people is just like the longer format videos and that more raw content and the more connectivity that you might get in the experience on there. And I went through and I kind of observed the human design community over on TikTok a little bit through this week, and there's really not a lot of, yeah, I just feel like there's a lot of things go, like I see a lot of great human design people on Instagram that I feel like their work or what they share would translate really successfully over on the TikTok platform, because they're not doing it in a way that's um, like that. I don't know. It's a really interesting web, but I also find it just hard. It's really going to be difficult in general if we have a like everybody's just trying to like information overload people through these bite-sized platforms, So either way, I believe that we should just be creating bridges to really connect in a hub. Like, especially after I've had multiple accounts deleted, there's a big conversation about TikTok not being there forever, right?
Mm.
So it's important to make sure, no matter what you're choosing to do, if you're choosing to share on social media and in whatever form you're doing, whether it's like my artwork, human design, to just have like a hub, like a website, a place that people can come back to and find you, just a source of that. So you're not relying on anything else that's kind of a little more outside of your control, no matter what happens with those platforms.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a helpful point, and it actually is making me think about how these aspects are going to be mutating how we relate through the interwebs. And the first thing was around like it's actually making my mind think in really different and interesting ways, because for whatever reason I'm really curious to know, like, okay, this is where we are and this seems to be working with people, and we can see the evolution of how people share and what works, and then suddenly like that definitely doesn't work and it's now this other way, and then that way stops working, and it's just sort of like this overlapping continuous flow.
Mm,
But transitioning what's done, and I mean, I have my own sort of fixed view of what I see, and I mean, so there might be people that are talking about this, but the word that stood out for me when you were talking about TikTok is it's humanity.
mhm,
It's like, well, how do we transition? Because, and how do we transition talking about human design in a way that will fit on TikTok? And that in itself is a mutation. That will be a big mutation in the space, I think, for those people that can pick that up and go. What initially came to mind was like doing a video on, talking about lamenting perhaps about frustrated generators. Maybe like that is sort of the humanity, like how does the rubber hit the road with human design when we're out and about, when you're meeting not self people or people who are living their design in one way or not another. And it's less teaching, even though I have actually started using, because I've just been researching different hairstyling tools. And
mhm,
TikTok is a great place with loads of like Bondi Boost reviews and people showing you how to do all of the things. So I've been on there looking at that, and it's really, really great. Very short videos. It's awesome. So how do we sort of transition and fit human design into that? I think is a really interesting it's going to be yeah, I just feel like it's really going to change the scene in a way that's good and interesting. It's going to liven it up. It's going to sort of breathe some air into it.
Mm, I love that. Because, I mean, it is just fascinating because oftentimes we're trying to, like, okay, well, success and like, how do I make a business or money out of this, right? But it's really like success isn't always, I mean, more often than not, it's not in a, I mean, I'm not ego defined. It's not that for me. It's really about creating like a real, like there's a real frequency of connection there. And oftentimes when we get into a world like human design and it becomes our language and it becomes the way we're navigating through the world, when you have a connection with somebody and you're speaking the same language, there's that intersection and that opportunity for success in that engagement. Um, and sometimes that is the fuel you need, just the fuel you need to do the other work that you have to do in the world. And that's how you get the energy to be able to support yourself with that kind of success in relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm wondering, can you give some pointers perhaps for people who feel called to maybe start experimenting on TikTok a little bit and seeing what sort of different content might, like human design content, might work there? Because when I think about doing that, my open head just goes, and I just don't know. It's like, I don't know. I'm like, but why can't I put that on Instagram too? Like, I just can't sort of dial into that. So, what advice would you have in that regard?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's the same thing as just getting experimental and seeing what where you feel engaged or like what kind of things you want to play with.
Mm,
I know for myself being receptive, sometimes I just see something and want to like go off of it or play with it. And that was always almost like a little invitation for myself to be able to respond in an invitation type way. Um, so, yeah. And I think the thing I love about it is it doesn't have to be any specificity, like really just explore, like give yourself permission to explore and not become like an expert, like throw the spaghetti out the wall a little bit and see
yeah.
what sticks. Because you don't know what will like you have to kind of feel it out in for yourself if it's something you're interested in doing, you know. And I think a lot of things when they're new for us are uncomfortable, but it's important for you to tune in again to why you're doing it or if it feels correct or not in a you know, to that sense.
And my channel of surrender, specifically my ego, is wondering, okay, how are you going to make money doing this though?
Mhm.
And I think this is a good time to flag that the opportunities that you got that made you money. I mean, there was art sales in there, but you were also invited to speak on podcasts and at other events as well. So, because when I think of TikTok, I'm like, it's a young generation. They don't have money. And that's not, I mean, it's not really, I'm missing the point, but that's initially sort of where my mind goes. So,
Or even if like, you know, somebody else, I think of a lot of successful, you know, Elise Meyer, she's a projector. She blew up on TikTok just sharing uh, you know who I'm talking about?
who is
Uh,
it?
Elise Meyer, she's just a
Oh,
very human person who shares her perspective just from her life experience. And it's fascinating to witness how just her being on there and sharing her perspective for like whatever she's experiencing, and she has phenomenal success in her world. And I think it is as simple as that could be when you share yourself authentically.
yeah.
Uh, like, yeah. But for me, it was like sometimes it's the in betweens or those opportunities that would come my way. There was definitely financial success I never had expected for myself. Um,
And I
But yeah, I don't know. I wasn't strategic about it. I just was
and
on
I
the ride.
I think that's the key for this, for me to remember, and other people who get caught in a similar sort of as me, or which is you don't know what how your success is going to look. You don't know what this is going to look like. Your only job here, your mission, is just to show up as authentically as you can, and which again can't be rushed. It's a journey to sort of distill our frequency and go through our process, and then you just wait and see what life delivers you from that.
Yeah. I will say it was interesting for me when I couldn't, the work I was doing had shifted and my mind was no longer engaged in what it was that I was doing. And I wasn't able to fully recognize that in myself. And so as I was taking on the jobs that I was getting, I could feel the depletion in my own interest in what I was doing. And then it wasn't working anymore. So it's not that I've not been creative, but there has to be a part of my definition involved in my creative process that I have to be bringing along into the things I say yes to, um, in correctness. So although I was getting like recognition and money, it didn't always translate to correctness for me.
Mm,
But I mean, it's an interesting world we live in as projectors because it's like it obviously we have to work and do all these things, but it's not as like simple, I would say, as that.
yeah.
Makes sense. There's still grit to it.
Yeah. Are you sort of saying that we have to be recognized at the end of the day for our definition, really, through the success, like through the recognition that comes to us?
If we're looking at trying to maintain long-term success,
Mm-hmm.
because like consistency is not consistency in what I'm interested in doing is going to be shifting with all my my open G center, and so it's again just important for me to check in and keep re-navigating the space in between those moments so that way I can stay in resonance with myself and making sure that I'm taking care of my mind, body, and soul and my energy.
Yeah.
Without that, there is no success.
So, so true. And I think that this is a perfect segue into how we experience desire, motivation, feeling cognition through how we experience that while we're engaging in social media. And
Mm,
then maybe we can go through each center and talk about how an open route, for example, can be experienced while engaging in social media. So we both share feeling cognition.
mm.
Um, and then you are, I mean, if there's anything in particular you want to say about shores, and then your desire, motivation, and survival view. Do you think there's anything else that we should cover off? We've sort of talked about the 5-1, but if there's anything else you want to flesh out with that.
Sure. I do find all those parts definitely play such an interesting factor, even just in how I share, because it has to feel. It always was such a mind game to me, and how simple it actually is. Like when I share or whatever I create, it just has to feel good. It has to feel right, and that's how I know I want to put it out there. Really, when I have that resonance.
So it has to feel right.
Yeah, there's like a feeling of correctness when I'm doing something. Like when anybody asks me like how I know a painting's done, I was like, I don't know, it just feels right. Like it's so simple that I just like.
Can you describe that? Like, because I have my own experience of feeling cognition. So I want to hear what yours is, but also describe like when it doesn't feel right and how that
Yeah,
feels.
yeah. I guess it just has an. It's almost just like a sweet neutrality. Um, it feels like like a clear, reflective, good and like I wouldn't say like good enoughist, like, but like there's like I'm not like something's off, because that's usually when I know it's not right. Something's off, or I'm like, there's something. I just feel like there's something off. And whenever that happens, it just kind of like needs more time for me to figure that out. Um, and maybe it's just a reflection of like me being off and like just not resonant. But yeah, I'm always like, and it is always like such a tweak. I'm like, feel like I want to do it, but I'm like, oh no. And usually it's just time. It could be timing. It could be a lot of it could be a lot of different things. But um,
Yeah. And I want to just sort of that, something's off. And I mean, how I feel that in my own aura, because feeling cognition, it's this visceral experience that extends outside of the body for me. Like I sort of feel like my body is larger, from how I sense things. And before we started, I was sitting there and had my eyes closed trying to organize how to open this today. And it's like I can feel, it's like I can sense there's the words or the information and it comes in and then it's like, okay, I've got it. But the tweak, it's almost like if I could describe that, it's like a contraction. It's like there's a little distortion in
yeah,
something. Like
definitely.
it's like a fold. I don't know. There's something as
It's
opposed
not clear.
to,
Like there's something that's not clear about
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard to describe because we're
Describe,
talking
describe the vibes.
vibes.
The
Totally.
vibes are off.
The vibes are off. There's something that I'm trying to prove here that is not healthy. That's something for me for sure. Often though in those times, like I'm just sort of warming up to sharing videos of me dancing in my underwear, which I think is, I don't know why that's important for me, but it is. And even though it honestly still feels like there's something a little bit off in it energetically, I'm still learning a great deal from it. And it's important for me to just have some grace for myself through that and to put it out there. And I mean, we're all living a material life, a trial and error, third line experience of every single person, despite the line that you have in your profile. And it's something you touched on at the start, actually. Not everybody feels like it's correct for them or they have the courage to put things out there that are imperfect. And some things that we put out are going to be bloody awesome, as you say. Not everything has to be perfect. We can have our own trial and error process with it. And the people that are correct for us are going to go, she's trying.
Hmm.
Cool. Good on her. That's okay. Yeah.
I love that because it's true. And I think yeah, I just love that you said that because that is what I was describing in, when you're doing something and not necessarily like not necessarily knowing why you're doing it, but you're doing it and it might not be perfect, like you said, and it might be like off, but it's not off in a not correctness for whatever's happening next. And there's no way to really describe that,
Mm.
or no way of knowing the importance of why we do certain things that we do. But those are all part of the path and the trajectory and the learning. And I feel like that is correctness, even if it feels like, oh, maybe something's off, but it's not off in a way that it's, like you said, there's still something that's drawing me to do this in some way.
So, is there, with your shores, is there any way that you can correlate that to social media?
I can certainly correlate it to the work I create. I love creating portals. I love creating portals of light that are transitional places between m- my reality and maybe a place that doesn't exist but kind of does. But I also can, in a lot of ways, relate to just connecting in communion. And this could be also being part of the 5-1, kind of getting in there, getting to know people, and then being able to, like, them being able to be on another side, even through a screen. That's kind of shoresy to me.
Mm,
Uh,
true.
yeah.
Hmm. So I'm valleys, and I mean, yeah, I'm a fourth line valleys. I'm all about the tea, the deets, just getting across everything, seeing what people are flowing through with. So That's quite fun for me.
Oh, I love
Yeah, it feels immersive. It feels like I'm sort of on the pulse with what people are doing and what they're bringing, and I enjoy that. That feels nourishing. Okay, so desire, motivation, acceptance, sense. How
that.
does that play out for you?
Well, I could see my desire motivation just really locking into whatever I'm doing. So once I decide on something, it's I'm doing it. Once I do sit in it, marinate for a while, I go all in. And so that heat seeking missile of achieve I it feels like achievement. Like I'll go after whatever it is. Um, so I feel like that definitely plays a part in it. Even just in wanting to connect with people, I'll message people all the time and get very brave. How else can I see that coming through? Yeah, not being afraid to get in there. Definitely see that play out.
Is that just in sort of connecting with people, or is there another way that that plays out?
Yeah, in a lot of ways. Between like not being afraid to connect with people, not being afraid to like get into the things and figure it out, or that trial and error process. I feel like it supports that a little bit. Um, what was the other question you had asked?
It was around acceptance sense.
Oh, accept it. I I find that to be really interesting when I was reflecting on this. Even just the idea of social media and like it being like nine nine centered differentiation, and just thinking about the entirety of everybody on there. And when I look at it and think about all the differences and nuances in our individualized selves, right? And it's just funny to watch it all play out, right? You have people with the channel of judgment or really fixed people, and you have all of it right in one place. And just how fascinating is that
Yeah.
connectivity, and how important it is to just remember in that acceptance way is like what's for you and what's not for you, and not to take it personally.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. Um, you know, we're all different people. We're all in our different stages of differentiating and becoming who we're here to be. And there's often it can be a clunkiness at times for people in moving through that process as well. And it's all okay. I have acceptance sense too. And I'd say in my highest form is it's okay.
Hmm.
It's everything is okay. It's okay. Don't freak out. It's okay. You're okay. We're
Hmm.
okay. Everything's okay.
Even just looking at like the way it plays out, how you have some people just like losing their minds in the comment section, or like
Yeah.
going at it together, and it's just like, all right, like it's on you. Like I don't know, that's how you want to spend your time. But yeah, I'm like, we got everybody here.
We got everybody here. That's right. Yeah. So I have need motivation. And I mean, that's a bit of an interesting one. I would say the main thing that's coming up for me around how I see that on social media is I see a lot of stuff put out there that's just not needed. I'm like, it's like an eye roll moment for me. People distort so far out of their their true nature to try
Mhm.
and find the satisfaction or the success that they think that they want to get it in the way that they think they need to get it by doing it the way that this person tells them to do it or how other people do it, and it's just all crazy. We're just
Oh
missing.
right, follow these steps. To,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it is.
There's
You
no
know what?
differentiation in that
No,
apart from learning that that's not the right way eventually.
and wasting your money and all
Yeah.
the things. Yeah, I've been lucky to avoid those things. Maybe my knowing kicks in when I'm like, yeah, no.
Yeah. And so, what is your transference to innocence look like online specifically?
Oh yeah, that's interest. That's a. It's kind of really just more flashy about me. I get a little like showy, I
Mm,
guess. Um, it could be just really superficial. It's more in like, oh, I'm still here than I want to like genuinely share, but I'm not aware of it either because I'm just like kind of disconnected.
yeah, that's interesting. I adore that reflection. Probably because I can relate as a sixth line. Yeah, there's like this lofty, detached sort of, I'm here, look at me, but like I'm not really looking at you and I don't even care.
Yeah. It's a very self-centered presence. Like,
It's weird, yeah. So my transference to fear online, I would say that it can probably come out when I'm maybe sharing something educational, like I won't just trust what will come out of what I already know. I'll think that I don't know enough and I'll start peeling through all of my books just to make sure I'm getting it all down there and that I'm not going to look stupid with my undefined ajna or something. But, I would say that I haven't really gotten many negative comments, but maybe a couple, a few over the years, and that can send me into some sort of, I mean, it would definitely be distraction, but also transference as well. Feeling like my survival's threatened. I'm taking it very personally. Like it can cause a very strong visceral reaction in
hmm,
me and upset my nervous system. Yeah.
yeah, I have similar experience, not necessarily maybe in motivation, but just in my one lines and in witnessing people share information online and
Mhm.
feeling like I don't know enough or that I, especially as
Yeah.
a 5-1, needing to back it all up and know
100%.
my stuff.
Yeah.
But I have like a lot of underlying fears if I don't feel secure in my foundation. Um, and so when I've witnessed people in the human design space online, which has been a really important part of my own process in getting stronger in myself, in discerning what feels correct in frequency. And I know we had kind of previously talked about this, is how well you could have a very knowledgeable, information based spoken person there online speaking about something. And information's great, but like integration and frequency and resonance with you and whatever the information is more important than maybe what's always kind of being visually or put out there. And so for me, when I've seen people go head to head about like the black book of human design and the white book and like what's correct and what's source material and all of those like really uh, like raw quotes and all the fact stuff, that's where my one line's been on a trip, and I can go not self in that experience of that. But for me, it's more the discerning like the frequency of truth and getting comfortable with what resonates with me outside of any of it, really.
Yeah. So, so true. And you didn't use the word comparison, but that's what it is.
Yeah.
When that little monkey jumps on your back, you lose your ability to discern, I think. So it's really to the
Hmm.
frequency, you
Yeah.
sort of forget that in that moment. So yeah, it's a good reminder to just kind of go, okay, I'm a bit triggered at the moment, however you want to call it. I'm heightened. Um, yeah, step away. Does this person actually, does their frequency resonate? And
Hmm.
yeah, yeah. So, and you have survival view. What's that like? And then your distraction to wanting.
Yeah. I would say that has definitely been a process of like like the way I've built kind of piece by piece up. And, I learn a little bit as I go and integrate it. I will kind of observe what is, I don't know, what else is going to come onto my foundation, that I've built. So I
Hmm.
could see that being, I guess, how like interacting and then adding it to my resources. So I feel like oftentimes I'm observing, taking pieces from here or there, and kind of just strengthening my own system in that sense. Um, and yeah, I over time have just collectively built through my own creative process, and then I see it just being mirrored in how I study. That's always been my way along the path. And then for wanting it, or need and wanting is just like usually kind of trips me up in like, oh, I need to be doing X, Y, and Z to be more successful, or like find success or be seen, and all those other kind of parts that come up.
Hmm.
Rushing around, doing more.
Doing more is always the answer for projector,
It's
not
always
self.
everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it's like, just make a list and start checking it off. That's always the way. Now
Just
get
make
back.
yourself sit down and do those things. Hilarious. Um, Yeah, so I have power view transference to personal. So I would say, another part of it, which probably works actually quite well with my valleys, with just sort of being immersed amongst it all, taking it all in, getting the tea. I can see who's up and who's down. There's that account power view press, which I think is really, I think that's brilliant. I think that it's, I don't know that anyone know who's behind that, which I think is just extra brilliant. But that's a great example of power view, just seeing, I and it honestly feeds into my power trips. I'm like, oh, that person's up, oh, they're down, but like how distorted or how accurate is it when I'm on a power trip? I don't know, but I can definitely, get I'm filtering for the winners and losers, and that's really fun for me. But it's really not so fun distracting to personal view. That's a really yucky energy. And I mean, and we haven't really talked about this, and we are getting close to time, but the prime and epsilon situation. So distraction is stronger for me. Going over to personal, just taking things personally, thinking it's all about me, which is an interesting thing with a defined ego. But it's okay at the same time. It's like, sure, that might be coming into play a little bit, but even though, and this is sort of interesting, like I'm aware, but I'm not aware of the frequency I'm putting out there. There's this sort of right reflective process that's happening in the background, I think. And you mentioned iteration, and I love that word. It's this continuous iteration of working on how we can show up a little bit cleaner
Mm-hmm.
every time. And sometimes, it'll be really a much less clean, but it's still part of the process. We screw up, but then we actually make a bigger step forward, and because we've learned so much from this mistake that we made over here, and we go, oh, shit, and then you can. So, and this is where we really just need to have so much, what's the word, like,
Self compassion.
yeah, exactly, self compassion, and hold that space for ourselves without judgment.
I feel like that's a beautiful like mirror to the deconditioning process for me, and how I also teach the deconditioning process, because really what I find success is in doing so is just that it's just the 1% better each day. And that's all you need is like, I'm a 1% better human and more aware, just that much every single day. And that is how I find it works. It's like,
Yeah.
that's the way I find it successfully working for me. And I'm good with the slow. I'm good with that slow.
Yeah, or even 0.1%. And then you go 10 steps back, but then you go further. So
And it's
it's,
always forward. Like no matter how
yeah.
many steps back, you're still always forward somehow.
Yeah,
And
totally. Yeah.
it's so beautiful being on this trip because even even just accept I actually sat down, this is a funny topic, but I actually sat down with myself as a mental projector, because the conditioning influence is just wild, and you're very open too. But I just said, even if I never deconditioned fully, which I have just accepted, I'm just like, I'm probably not going to. I will probably never be deconditioned, and that's not even real for me anyway. Um, I'm 100% better of a human than I've ever been in my entire life. And like, and like, I even like let go of like being not self correct or not good. That's amazing for me. And I like myself 100% better. And what a gift that is.
I fucking love that so much. Tara, you have shared some really, really beautiful things today. There are a lot of nuggets of wisdom, I think, just to give people a refreshed perspective on how to approach social media. Um, and to take a bit of the pressure off. I think that, there can be a lot of that. Social media is a tool that we can choose to set boundaries with, and not in like a strict heavy way. It's just we can all use that to lighten up a little bit around it, because it is such a strong conditioning force, as you say, that hopefully this conversation has helped people reframe it a little bit.
Mm.
um, so thank you so much for your time and everything that you have given me to sort of ponder, to ask some questions around. We've had a couple conversations even before this podcast, and it's been so beautiful to connect with you this way. I really appreciate our connection, and thank you for your time and your energy contributing to this. And I hope that it finds the people that it needs to find. um, I suppose my last question for you is what practical advice, maybe for projectors, maybe for everyone, just as an overview, I mean, what is your practical advice for people navigating social media that maybe haven't found their groove with it yet?
Let's see. I would say for anyone who's wayfinding with social media is to allow this space for themselves to really feel into and give permission to explore whatever inner part of you wants to kind of come forward. And I know that doesn't sound very practical, but I believe that's like the stepping stone piece to uncover in yourself that's going to help lead you forward.
And if they're unsure what that looks like, the things that they want to share, but they have an urge to share something,
Hmm.
do you know where they could start?
Yeah, I love it. It's so simple. It's so simple. It's just, what do you like? Share. Really, it's so simple to share what you like. There's nothing more authentic and easy to connect with others between your favorite books, what you're interested in, what you're creating, what you find fascinating. All of those little things actually are huge in the way other people kind of notice, oh, I actually really like that too. And it brings the curiosity of communion in that sense. So it's usually like the really simple things.
I love that. And so what if they okay, I know what I like and I have an urge to share, but what if nobody cares about what I have to say? Like, what if it's dumb, or what if it doesn't matter, or they can't find that courage to actually share it because of XYZ?
Hmm.
What's your advice there?
So maybe find like a supportive friend. I
Mm,
have a supportive friend in any moment of uncertainty or when I feel myself transitioning into like that brave place of like, oh, I'm going to share a different part of me that I feel exposed in doing. I have at least one friend that I let her know, and I'm like, okay, keep me in check, please, if I'm about to embarrass myself, because she knows me clearly,
hmm.
and also will support me. So it's like I know I have that one person, that pillar, the support behind me in those moments of uncertainty. But yeah, also just allowing yourself to be comfortable in discomfort is really powerful.
That is such good advice. The power of having someone to just bounce something off and to support you in a moment of doing something that feels really uncomfortable. I mean, I'm tribal, of course, so that feels really nice. But yeah, I love that. That's so
Mhm.
helpful. And it's so easy. It's so simple. But I don't know. I didn't go there. I'm sure a lot of people don't automatically think to go, hey, can you help me with this?
Mhm. I realized how much we don't recognize the not naturalness of right social media to an extent. So to have somebody that does know us in our naturalness in a certain way
Yeah.
and does have our backs in our best interest,
Yeah.
it just makes it more comfortable. It makes it more comfortable doing the things.
Yeah. And I think that what we've really sort of driven home today is the value in understanding your design when navigating social media, to understand how it's going to pull you and what's going to be correct or incorrect from you. And even if you're quad left, for example, to go into it with a specific agenda with all of the things, if it's coming from the mind, is incorrect. It's like what emerges out of you, and then you can approach that strategically or receptively. But it's a jungle out there, and it's so easy to get pulled into doing things the way that you think that they need to be done according to how other people say, etc. And human design can really help to support your process of differentiation, which is really just about being yourself, doing it with greater ease. I mean, unless you're a struggler,
Mm-hmm.
perhaps, but that's a word that comes up for me. It's like, well, it's easier if I'm showing up in a way that is true to me, and I'm not trying to prove things in an unhealthy way, or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, or thinking that it's correct to read all of the books before putting a post out because now I'm transferred, or these things. So it can really help, like being able to see things concretely and label them, can help people distill their frequency and their essence down. And then we can slowly, help balance out all the fucked up shit on social media.
All the rest, or just
All the rest.
just blanket it out. I'm not involved in that part or something. I don't know, but yeah, I
And
love.
yeah. And so you work with people as well. We've both gone through analyst training. So if there's anyone that has resonated with Tara and wants to talk to her and maybe work with her a little bit around understanding your designs a little bit more so that you can make social media work for you in a really healthy, supportive way, as opposed to you working for it. Then
Or trying to
fine.
fit.
Yeah. Yeah. Then you're open to DMs on Instagram. You've got your two accounts, which I'll tag.
Yeah,
Is that right? Yep.
yeah. Please reach out. I believe probably my expertise is if anybody's looking for support and just kind of wayfinding, navigating between creativity or resourcing, like how they want to use the tool and kind of needing to weed out and navigate more authentically what that might look like for someone and be able to problem solve together. I am open to that
Ooh,
support.
that's so good. That's huge because, and I'm just going to drop back to your survival view where you can do that wayfinding, problem solving, like, well, what is it that you actually really want to do so that we can start building that strong foundation so that you
Hmm.
can start from a strong place to build upon moving forward, as opposed to just like out here in the ethers trying all of the things, which I've
Yeah.
done for bloody years. And it's tiring. It brings bitterness. um, it can
Wasted energy.
it's a waste of energy. It's not efficient. Yeah.
Yeah.
As opposed to, yeah, getting some help with that. And I want to just say, like, there's a lot of people out there who can help you strategize with social media and all the things. This is not that, though. I will say this is a conversation about, like, well, who are you? What do you want to do?
Hmm.
And how can we really build on that in a way that will serve
Feel right.
you best moving forward? Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. That's great.
Well, thank you. I want to take a moment to just really thank you for holding this space and inviting me on here and having this conversation in such a fun, honest, real way. It's been a pleasure and just adore it. I adore you.
Well, ditto, Tara. Thank you again for your time. This has been beautiful. I'm really happy to have dug into this, and we'll see you around the traps. Oh, and we didn't touch on the centers, so we will do likely an Instagram live on that. So we'll go through the not self of each center on an Instagram live. So if you don't already, follow us there, and we will see you over there. And happy creating. I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. Gosh, with those two head to Ajna channels, we really get a lot of potent wisdom that comes through. Tara has spoken in the past about how it's difficult to stay embodied with so much mental activity, and I just want to say that Tara, you did great, and it's been a real pleasure. How I feel different after our conversation is a softening towards the platforms. I feel a little more, I feel like I can approach them with deeper compassion and empathy for myself and other people. And in doing so, that helps the frequency in which I show up. If you had a similar experience, I'd love to hear. Feel free to comment on this podcast or video, or send us a message on Instagram. Our handles and web addresses are linked in the show notes. And again, my apologies for not visually being able to see this conversation. You would have loved it. Uh, but here we are. This is where we find ourselves. So thank you again for watching, and we will see you next time.